Well, welcome back to another episode of Survival Saturday on Coffee and a Chat. So I've been busy working in my garden. I try to get out there every day. It is a blessing to be able to get out there. I love being in the garden. I really do. And this week I was thinking, one of the things that has really helped me in so many ways is how I've developed my own way of composting. And so I thought today that's going to be my tip that I want to share with you is about composting. Now, where Marvin and I put in our ground garden, when we started that several years ago, that dirt was mainly fill dirt. It wasn't good at all. And so we tried to mix some things in and some manure, chicken manure and stuff. We got a lot of chicken plants around us, so that's pretty easy to come by. So we had some of that, and I don't remember what all, some leaves and things, and just tried to get something in there. The soil was just almost completely dead. But, we hobbled through. And then the next year, it was better and better. And I'm telling you, this year when he went out to plow, when he goes out to plow up the garden in the spring, I go out there and first I look at how rich and dark that soil has gotten. And then I always get some and smell the earthiness of it. And I can get a good handle on what my soil's like for the year. And this year, oh my word, it's beautiful. And we have built it up to that. You can even see that the garden kind of sits a little higher than it used to because we built it up. And we've done that spending no money. So here's what we do. And I think there's a lot of advantages to composting. First off, it does save money. I know there's a lot of people that they go and they get compost to add to their gardens every year. They get the fertilizers they get. They spend a lot of money on bags of things to mix into their gardens, and that's fine. But I'm trying not to spend any money, and I'm trying to make good use of my resources. So when I am... Maybe you don't even know what composting is, but that's when you take organic matter and allow it to break down and turn back into dirt. And depending on what you're using as organic matter is the different nutrients that come into that compost or that new soil that you're making. And so you can really get complicated. I've watched some YouTube videos where they're making stacks and they build bins and they put their and they layer greens and then brown layers and then green layers, and they take the temperature and, and they do all this stuff and stir it, water it and all. And I'm just like, I need to keep it as simple as possible. So I don't know if anybody else calls this. I call it cold composting. And I just kind of do it the way God does it in many ways. And I don't worry about all the other and layering certain amounts or whatever. So my composting starts in the kitchen. I have a big bucket with an airtight lid that fits on it. It was a container I already had. I think when our grandson was younger, I think we used to keep his cereal in it. But now I just put all my composting scraps. So if I peel vegetables, the peels go in there. Even the pits and seeds out of things. Some paper even goes in there. I compost when I'm done with stuff. If it's just on regular white paper that's not colored or anything, I might even put some color paper in there, but I'm trying to keep as many things out as I can. But I'll tear up paper, instead of throwing it in the garbage. If it's just regular paper, I'll tear it up, newspaper, whatever, and throw it in there. When Marvin, he drinks a lot of tea in the winter, and the whole tea bag goes right into that compost bucket. I don't put meat in there. I don't put bones in there. I don't put fat in there. I keep it to plant-based materials. And no plastics, no metals, nothing like that, because those aren't going to turn into good soil. So I fill that bucket, and when it's full, then I move it outside. Now, and this has been several years of coming up to where we're at now. And what I've learned, this works best for me, and it may work for you. So in the winter, we take the ash out of our wood stove. We take the contents out of the compost bucket in the kitchen, like cardboard, cardboard, newspaper, things like that. And we just throw it and scatter it around on our ground garden on the top of it. And we just let it sit there in the winter and let it do its thing. When we throw leaves on there, maybe some grass clippings, from doing yard work and cleanup. We have to be careful about some of that because we have a lot of poison ivy around here, and we're trying to keep that out of the garden. It has got in there before, and we're able to remove it. But, we try to avoid things, we have gum trees, so we don't want the gum balls in there and growing trees. And then we have maple trees, so all those little helicopters, I'm always pulling up maple trees. And so those things we don't purposely put in there. And we just let nature do its thing over the winter. We do not worry about it. We let it break down. Rain comes, snow comes, whatever. And that just starts breaking down naturally. By the time spring comes and it's time to turn that garden over, which we do, Marvin plows and then he rototills our garden. And so that mixes it all in. And then through the summer, when, we get the rototiller in there down the rows, it's just mixing more stuff in. When the garden's done in the fall, we just leave all of that there. And I'll say, like, this year, I've got so much food coming up, just volunteer from vegetables that had maybe rotted in the garden, that weren't good, but the seed in them was good, and maybe something that didn't get picked in time and it kind of started to deteriorate. So there's a lot of seed that shows up in my garden anyway, and I'm just transplanting the volunteers that, the really great ones. I mean, there's a lot of them. A lot's going to get turned under. But I've been, transplanting those into rows as I'm doing the garden too. And so far this year, I've not bought any plants. And we're going to talk about that in a future video too. But of how, I can start planting my garden for no money. Anyway, so with the compost, it feeds into that soil and it puts all the nutrients into the soil that it needs. It adds fertilizer to it. There's other things you can throw in, like Epsom salts. You can put Epsom salts in your garden, sprinkle that on there. That is a form of fertilizer. And especially some plants that get the bloom rot on them. If I put Epsom salts around them, it puts enough calcium and stuff into the soil that it ends that for me. I've had really good success with that. And so that's what we do with the ground garden. And then through the summer, other than stuff that gets thrown, like when I'm pulling weeds up, I just throw them into the aisle and then, between the rows. And then when we go through and till it up, to keep the weeds down, it just works it in, helps stuff to rot down and add more nutrients. And so that's what I do there. Now in the summer, I take my compost and I go to the greenhouse. And in my greenhouse, I have some really big planters that were actually given to me. So I fill those with the compost, and I might get a little bit of dirt from the garden to put on top of what I'm at, to layer it, because it helps it break down faster. But the heat in the greenhouse during the summer turns that compost into soil within just a matter of weeks, not months. And 4 to 6 weeks, I've got some beautiful soil that, compost that I am feeding on top of things. And then I'll just kind of take it and dress it along my raised beds that I have in the greenhouse. And then I have a raised bed out in the yard, and I just, will supplement and feed that soil by sprinkling my compost on there. And anyway, it's super simple to do. Very little. The most work I do is putting my organic matter into the bucket. Then when the bucket is full, carrying it either to the garden or to the greenhouse, depending on what time of year it is. and dumping it. And I do, in the greenhouse, I do when I go out to water my plants in there, because I have to do that almost every day, definitely every day in the heat of summer. Then I will also, sprinkle water in those planters with the compost that's breaking down. And that's the thing, as it breaks down, it keeps getting lower and lower. It really breaks down, and you can add more and more on top. And then, and I move from planter to planter, and when one's ready to go, after it's full and it's sat there for a few weeks, it's ready to go. And then I'll start scooping stuff out so that it'll be empty again to start with the next stuff. So it helps me feed my soil and build up my soil, and not having to go out and spend money on anything. And I'm not worried about the pH levels of the soil or any of that. I just keep it very, very simple. And it works. It works for me. It works great. Actually, if I was trying to do all the fancy stuff, I'd be so frustrated. I wouldn't be gardening. So the other advantage that I know, now we haul our own garbage, but, and I'm going to try to find out from one of my neighbors what they're paying for their garbage service. Not everybody has garbage service here, but some of my neighbors do. And so I'm going to try and find out what they're paying, because for us to, haul ours, even if we were, I don't know, one of those roadside dumpster things like you normally have for a service probably holds 2 of the really large leaf bags worth of garbage. That's probably what you could get into it. And if I was to even just be hauling that every week, 2 of those great big bags, or even 3 of those great big bags, I could throw them in the back of, the little hatchback of my car and run up here to the dump. Now, we do live within a mile of the transfer station, so it's very easy access for us. And it would cost us less than $8 to leave that. Now, as it is, we only go maybe 3 times a year normally. Now, we've made some extra trips this year because we've been cleaning out some stuff and we had some more trash to move. But I know that, my garbage does not fill up near as fast. It's amazing, especially when you're canning and, and doing things out of the garden, is to just put all that, stuff that those peels you're taking off and stuff, put them back into the garden, because they will fill a garbage bag themselves pretty fast. So I know that it cuts down on the amount of trash that, of it just going in a plastic bag to a landfill somewhere. So I feel like, we're doing something better there too, because that's another thing, is trying to find ways to recycle and cut down on the amount of trash. It's too easy to throw things in the trash. So that's something I'm always working on to try to cut that down. But definitely I notice that there is a large amount of stuff composting. And like right now, for the most part, it's usually just Marvin and I, but well, half the time it's just Marvin and I. And then we've got different family members that are here more often now, and we may be combining into one household, some of us, in order to, which means they'll be coming here because we've got the room, to be able to save money, because it's getting rough. And I'd been telling my kids this for a long time, that I believe we're going to go back to that time where you have multi-generational families, where you start living together again to be able to survive. And we're finding, some, they're trying to cut back on their expense to save money to buy a place or whatever. And, we can work together on that. And Marvin and I could use some help, to have some kids around here for a while to help us out on some things, because it's a lot of work for 2 old people. And I don't want to have to lessen my garden space because I can't handle it. I'd like to expand it so that we can grow even more food. And it seems like each year we expand a little more. We almost doubled the garden size this year. And, but I need help. Yeah, I need help. So it's a lot of work for just Marvin and I. So anyway, composting. I don't know if you do that or not, but I know that I used to spend a lot of money when I lived in town going and buying potting soil to fill my pots, to grow my flowers or whatever. And I was always growing veggies and flower pots and stuff too, and my herbs and whatnot. I spent a lot of money every year doing that. And then, when Marvin and I got married, it's like, this is ridiculous. I don't need to do that. Because he was like going, look at all the dirt around us. You can just go get dirt out of the woods. And I'm like, yeah, but there's a lot of spores of things I don't want in the garden. But then it's like, wait a minute. I had learned composting from my parents. Now, they did it a little more fancy and tried to be more specific and scientific about it. And, and my mom and dad lived with us for a while until they passed away. But, my mom is like, man, you've really simplified this down. Because I'm like, Mom, it doesn't have to be that complicated. And so she watched that first year. She goes, wow, this works. In fact, I think it's working better than what I used to do. So, yeah, you don't have to have fancy composting bins. And I've tried so many different things. I even had a bin built out of pallets that I was dumping my stuff into, and then I'd go out with the pitchfork and mix it up and trying to do it that way. And I just ended up with raccoons and things in my compost pile, digging through it, taking out what they wanted and spreading everything everywhere. So then I was spending more time just breaking it up to put in there. And the thing on the garden, do animals come and go through it sometimes? Absolutely. Not so much in the winter. Believe it or not, I'm not sure where they're getting their food in the winter because I thought it would be really bad, and it's really not. It's more in the fall and the spring that I notice the activity, but they're just moving it around on the garden space. It's not, spread across the yard. And when it's in the greenhouse, that's closed up a lot of the time. And even if it's not, I've had very few animals want to go in my greenhouse, other than I've had some birds want to go nest. So it's, that works better for me living with wildlife. It just does. And there's nothing wrong with helping feed the wildlife. They need to eat too, especially, the birds will get down in there and be eating. So anyhow, I will say this too, when you do the composting to where you heat it up, that will kill any seeds, which that's what a lot of people love. Like, they can throw their weeds in there and whatever, and it kills the seeds. The heat does. But I like not killing the seeds, because that's why I have so many volunteers that start coming up, because I have things that come out of out of the compost too. And I'm waiting, because I know I've got a bunch of avocado pits that went in this year, and they have a tendency to then sprout and come up and be all wonderful. And I want one to come up in the greenhouse, because I don't know, maybe I can get it to survive in there year round. I don't know. We'll see. Always testing with something, trying something new, trying to learn what works for us where we're at and all of that. But composting is something that I think has really been a good plus in my life. And it saves us a lot of money every year, that we're not having to go out and supplement with something else. We've got everything we need right there. So maybe that will help you too. And just a better use of our trash. There, how's that? All right, I'm going to let you guys go, because I need to get back and get busy again. I've got so much to do, and I want to get some more, I need to plant some more stuff and go weed around some of the things that are planted, and hope my garden's drying out enough from all the rain we had that it's not such a mud hole, so we can get in there with the rototiller and get it worked up and looking good in between the rows. Okay, well, I love you guys. I hope you're having an awesome day. Again, be in the Word of God. Read it for yourself. Let the Holy Spirit tell you what it means, and let Him bring conviction to your heart of what He's trying to tell you. Strengthen that relationship with Jesus Christ. You need Him more today than you needed Him yesterday, and there is no relationship more important than that one. So hope you're doing well. I love you guys. I pray for you. You pray for me, and God will get us all through. All right. I'll be talking to you next Saturday with another Survival Saturday. We'll see. Maybe we'll talk about seeds. I don't know. Well, I've got a whole list of things to talk to you about. But this week was compost. So anyway, you guys have a great day, and I'll see you in between with some other Coffee and a Chat videos. All right. Talk to you later.